I wasn't sure what I was going to do. We got the interview with Khomeini shortly after the hostages, the American hostages, had been taken. And we got the interview for the reason that we had covered, I'd never met Khomeini before, but his surrogate son and the man who was his foreign minister for a while in charge of radio and television, Sadek Gobsadek. And we had really covered the revolution as it was developing outside Iran. And I knew Iran a little bit because I had interviewed the Shah on several occasions and the Shah Banu. And I'd covered Iran, so I knew a fair amount of it, about it. In any case, we were invited to the holy city of Qom to interview him there in his headquarters, a room about the size of this room, only maybe half again as high, with his own cameras there. And when I arrived in Tehran, I was met by Gobsadek, who gave me the news that I was going to have to submit questions ahead of time. I said, we don't do that. He said, Mr. Wallace, no questions, no interview. He said, we'll have to announce that you asked. So go ahead and announce that we asked. So I put together, I don't know, Barry Lando and I put together maybe 18 questions. All of them turned down. Finally, on the floor of this studio, without Khomeini there, the ambassador, the Iranian ambassador from Moscow, who had been called back for the crisis, and from Tokyo, who had been called back, and Gobsadek and Khomeini's son, Ahmed. We negotiated the question. We finally came up with the right questions. And then the man came in, and I rose, put out my hand, and he didn't look at me. He just swept past me, sat down, stared straight ahead. And I'm over there at 90 degrees from him with the translator in between us. And I asked all the questions, and he would stare straight ahead, no eye contact, and it said, in effect, that the hostages were going absolutely no place unless the Shah was returned to Iran, which we expected, actually. And so I worked around that. And then I figured, what the dickens are they going to do if I ask a couple of questions that had not been okayed ahead of time? So I said, I remember very well, forgive me, Imam, but Anwar Sadat said, his words, not mine, Anwar Sadat says, you are a lunatic, and that you are not, I believe I said, and that you are not a credit to Islam. The translator looks at me as though I am the lunatic if I think that he's going to translate that for the Ayatollah. I said, no, I heard Sadat say that on television. So he translates. It's the only time the man looked at me. Turns toward me and smiles and proceeds to emasculate, if there's such a word, Sadat, and suggests that good Muslims will take care of that situation.